Carly.
Hello.
Oh, great. I can hear you. That's fantastic. I thought for a minute, oh, I couldn't. Anyway, everybody, I would love to welcome Carly Budd to you. So Carly is a children's occupational therapist, and she worked for the NHS for many years and then really went into private practice. And she's a mum of two. She knows what it's like to have a 4- and a 6-year-old. They're really adorable. And she has an absolute passion for children's well-being, and that's why she created something called Developmental Play, to really promote and understand play and support families, because of the difference that it makes when you integrate it in a really sensible, fun way, so it's not some kind of burden. Oh, I've got to spend quality time with my children. I mean, I can't imagine anything more of a burden than looking upon it that way. I think Carly is going to tell you a lot more about this, but also I think this talk is absolutely perfect for people who love working with young families, maybe want to work with young families more, but maybe aren't sure at the kind of extra offering that they can build in. Yeah, so I'm going to hand over to Carly.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. Thank you.
Pleasure, Carly. Pleasure.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. As Rosemary says, I'm Carly, and I am an occupational therapist, and I specialised quite early on in paediatrics, working, as Rosemary said, in the NHS. I had my own children, and then I went into my own independent practice. And then in the last year or so, I have been working as the founder of my Developmental Play Academy. And for me, this was really a way to target and work with families in the mainstream. So a lot of the families that I was meeting as an OT were families with children who would have perhaps developmental delays, concerns around their development, perhaps disability or some other kind of condition that would be impacting the way that they could play and interact with their environments. So I was very, very drawn to the health promotion side of things. So I set up the Developmental Play Academy so that people who are working with children, who are working with families, particularly those of young children from birth to 5, the courses and things that I offer in that enable you to teach parents about the power of play. So as an occupational therapist, I would look at a child, and play is their main occupation. Play is how a child from birth is able to explore their world, navigate their bodies, learn about themselves, learn about their environment, and learn to become separate, learn that they are separate to their mother, because that actually in itself takes time. Now, play as an occupation, play is the work of a child, play is the leisure of a child, it's how they're productive, and as I say, it's how they learn. As I was saying earlier, as an occupational therapist, I'll be looking at play at how this is going to support a child's development. And that's not just physically, that's emotionally, how it's going to support their emotional resilience, their emotional well-being. It's also socially, how it's going to support that child in terms of their communication skills, their ability to be social with their family members, with other children, with siblings, to support that socialization side of development. It also looks at cognitive ability as well, so problem solving, attention and listening skills, and of course physical skills as well. So actually physically being able to coordinate your body so that you can do what you want to do. And when babies are born, they obviously are born with very little mobility, and it takes time for those babies to develop the skills that are required for more complex play. But a big thing that I really like to talk about when it comes to developmental play, so that's what I call play, is developmental play, when it's really targeting those areas, that emotional, that social, that physical and that cognitive development, then we are really calling that developmental play. When we are working with our little ones from birth, we're really wanting to get in early to be able to give them those opportunities to play. And you can play with a baby. And sometimes people think, but babies can't play. They can't play with toys. They can't use their hands. They sort of maybe look at you, have a nappy change and, cry and all these other things. But there are moments in there that you can play with a little one. And the reason it is so important to acknowledge this, that it is important from birth, is because the critical first 1001 days of a child's brain development will form a lifetime of connections in the brain. So what this means is the experiences a baby has in the first 1000 days of their life, so that's conception to 2 years of age, that is what will form the blueprints for their physical and emotional skills for the rest of their lives. So it's huge. And actually just recently, on the 25th of March, I believe it was, the government set out some guidelines and some goals based on their the best start of life, I think it's called, the first 1001 critical days paper, because the government are now recognising how crucial these very early years are. And they did find from this report that families are not always getting consistent support. There's support out there, but it's perhaps not always consistent. It's not always easily accessible. It's perhaps not always what they need. And it's perhaps not always changing and being flexible as their child's growing and developing. So there is now a big push to really support families right from the get-go, from pregnancy through to birth and beyond. And there's these goals being set now for the best start of life. And I believe they're going to be setting up Start for Life hubs and things like that. These are things that we've seen before in the past. I know when I first qualified as an OT, it was Sure Start centres and things like that. And sadly, things like that, because of funding, haven't always continued. So I think it's being really good that this paper's highlighted that need for communities to have access to these resources to support their families, because ultimately what a child experiences is what a family are able to offer them. What I talk about a lot is how family or a parent is a baby's environment. So what they are able to offer in terms of nurturing, care and connection, that's going to be huge when it comes to that child's actual physical brain development. So a baby's brain, it has rapid growth in the first few years of life. At birth, their brains are around 20% developed, but by age 1, a child's brain has doubled in size. And astonishingly, by age 3, it's reached about 90% of an adult-sized brain. So when you think about how much growth is going on in the brain, the reason that growth is happening is actually the connection of brain matter, brain tissues, axons and dendrites, without going too much into the complex neurological components of the brain. What it's doing is those connections are taking up space, and it's enabling that brain to grow and flourish. Babies are born genetically predisposed and genetically wired to receive social experiences, to seek out a face, particularly eyes and mouth, above anything else. They will always absolutely love familiar voices, so particularly that of their mother, caregiver, father. The voices that they would have heard when they were in utero are going to be the most familiar to them. And what's happening is, when we are giving these, our little ones, when they're born and they come into the world, when we are giving them our attention, when we are responsive to them, so when we are acknowledging that you cannot spoil a baby, that they're always going to be communicating with you. If they're crying, it's because they're communicating something. It might take us a little while to work it out, but actually we know now you cannot spoil a baby, you cannot hold a baby too much. You're not going to be making a rod for your own back. What you're actually doing is teaching that child that they are important, that they are safe, that they are secure, and their brains are going to respond in response to that. So their brains are going to be nurtured in a way that forms blueprints that that's the kind of relationships that they're going to expect. Physically, when we give our babies opportunities to move, so obviously for a very, very small baby, we're going to be having a lot of cuddles, hopefully, a lot of skin to skin, which can continue. And actually just having those moments with our babies, having a chance to talk to our baby, sing to our baby. They don't care if we can hold a tune or not. That is baby play. Very, very early on as a newborn, just that connection is going to be what's actually classed as baby play. So it's what I call playful interaction. So that kind of singing, and we a lot of us do it automatically. We talk in this sing-song voice, and it can be quite hard with a very young baby, because for parents, you know, they can be very tired. It could be their first child, their second child, and it can still be very overwhelming. They might not have the support that they need. And that's why it's so important for these parents to know, you know, to ask help when they need it, if they can. And also to empower parents to know that they don't have to have all singing, all dancing toys. And this is something I get asked about a lot as being a paediatric occupational therapist or a children's occupational therapist, whichever term you prefer to use, is, you know, what toys can I get for my baby? Now, babies do like, you know, exploring different things, but the reason that they love things like faces and singing and a little bit of silliness is because, like I said earlier, they are ready and ripened to experience communication, interaction. Our babies are learning how to be humans, and they learn that through us. So when we are, as I say, responsive to them, when we are playful with them, they learn that the world is a fun place. If we are unable, or, you know, we don't respond to our babies and they are left to their own devices, you know, they don't experience that touch, they don't experience connection, then unfortunately it really does have a really detrimental effect. You know, in extreme cases, and I always hate talking about this, but in extreme cases, which has been seen in orphanages, particularly there was the Romanian orphanages, their brains actually just great big black holes in their brains, and babies actually died through lack of connection, lack of touch. All their basic needs were met, so they had their nappies changed and they were fed, but they didn't get any of the other stuff, and they died. And that is absolutely awful, horrendous. But if anything, if we can learn from that actually, you know, babies need that. This is human, basic human need, is to be seen, it's to be heard, it's to be touched, and it's to feel nurtured. So I'm really passionate about this. I am actually also a baby massage and baby yoga lecturer, as well as an occupational therapist. So you know, the importance of touch is incredible. And when I'm talking about play as well, I think sometimes we forget that as well as massage and baby yoga, we can actually be playful with our babies. Like I say, from a very early age, we can have our babies from birth on us, on our chests, on our laps. We can sing, we can talk to our babies, and that is actually, as I say, that is play. You get all of these different toys for babies, but they probably won't play with them until they're about 18 months old, to be honest. And as a mum myself, I even got all the things that I thought, you know, this would be good, but it really changed as well my perspective, actually becoming a mother as well. As a baby's getting more able, so as they're spending time out, you know, they've been tucked up in the womb for 9 months, you know, if they're full term. When they are then out in the world, they need to have opportunity to actually move their bodies, to explore movement. They need an opportunity to work against gravity. So as the babies are becoming a little bit older, you know, some babies, depending on their personalities, want to do this a lot sooner, but it's okay to get down on the floor with your baby. You know, you can put nice blankets down, just always making sure that airways are clear and that babies are always supervised by their adult. And you can get, you know, encourage families to get down on the ground with their babies, particularly on their tummies, because being on their tummies when they're awake and supervised is a really crucial position for play for young babies that's going to really support their physical development. So it's going to support the development of their spine, it's going to support the development of the muscles in their neck and in their backs, as well as a whole host of different benefits, sensory processing, all sorts of things. But it's also a really perfect opportunity for playful interaction. So my advice would always be put a baby, a young baby down, or any baby down on the ground on their tummy, or even on a parent's lap if they're really not happy with that. Begin with just sort of 10 seconds, 30 seconds, because so many babies dislike it to begin with. And it's because I think sometimes our expectations are too high. Always ensure that that baby's in the right frame of mind for it. So they're not hungry, they're not really tired, they're in that quiet, alert state, which is that state where they're open-eyed, they're giving you eye contact, they're cooing, they've got relaxed limbs. That's the state that we're looking for a baby to be in a playful space. So tummy time is an amazing opportunity for that playful interaction and using a parent's face, getting eye contact. You can bring in at this point, you know, maybe other things to look at. Board books are great, scarves, different coloured things. Of course, babies, what they see, they much prefer high contrast. So that's going to be much better that stage when they're very young. But certainly they're always going to prefer a face over any toy. And then as they're getting older, we can start to challenge our babies a little bit more. So as well as tummy time from birth, we can also, you know, being on their backs, absolutely fine, as long as it's not to the detriment of them playing in other positions. You do get babies who do get flattenings on their head where they've spent a lot of time on their backs. And of course, we have the back to sleep advice, which is absolutely necessary to make sure our babies are safe when they're asleep. But that has meant that we've seen a real increase in flattenings or plagioccephaly, which causes these flattenings of the skull. Baby skulls, if you imagine, I was talking earlier about the brain, it is developing at a rate of knots, as well as the birthing process that requires the brain, the skull to be able to compress. The skull also has to grow quite rapidly. So it's very malleable, the skull. And for that reason, if they spend a lot of time and getting a lot of pressure on one side or on the back, sometimes you get them on a side or directly at the back. That's why, because that pressure can start to mold the back of the head. It can be sorted out, but it really must be caught early. Early intervention is key with that. So tummy time is one of the key things that we can do. It's not just cosmetic. It is also actually to enable babies' brains to grow in the way that they should. So I talk a lot about tummy time in my Developmental Play Academy. I have actually got a tummy time practitioner's course. We also look at different positions for play as well. So tummy time, I've said, on their backs, great. Laying on their sides, fantastic. So getting that variety of movement. So that's baby play. And you can, as I say, bring in toys that are safe for little ones, but the interaction that they get with a parent is going to be fundamental. Of course, that puts a lot of pressure on parents. Sometimes they think, oh my goodness, I just want a cup of tea and to sit down. I've been up all night and now they're awake and I feel like I've got to play with them. But just, you know, holding their babies, responding to their babies, talking about their day, it's all going to build up and support that growth of that brain and get those networks, those pathways growing in the brain that's going to help that baby create a roadmap of what the world is like and how to navigate and to work out their place within it. As a baby's getting that a bit older, they're sort of sitting, they may be pulling up. Of course, it's giving that baby the opportunity to move and to move safely. We can start bringing in much more sort of play objects then for sort of the sitting babies. Treasure baskets are lovely. Of course, they do need supervision from an adult, because these toys are often, they're actually what I call non-toy toys. So they're things that you just usually find around the house or out in nature, and they're novel to a child because, you know, they're not just shiny plastic things, which is often what you'll find in the baby aisle at a toy store, is plastic things or soft toys. Which absolutely have their place, but babies do really like real life things. But of course, we just have to be really mindful of their safety when they're using these, and not anything too small, that, because of course babies mouth everything. So it's getting the balance between enabling that child to, you know, sit and play. And I think treasure baskets are really great from about 6 months, when a baby's typically sitting, not necessarily, but that's around that age. And really encouraging a baby to start using their finger skills. They're going to be using their postural control for sitting. They're going to be exploring different textures. All these lovely experiences of play are going to really be supporting the development of that child. Of course, if they've got their parent there or caregiver, or, you know, a sibling as well can be involved in this, then they're going to be getting that communication, that social side, seeing what other people do. Babies and children do really observe a lot of what's going on around them before they seem to really be paying attention. There's a lot more going on than we give them credit for. Getting out in nature is great as well. Getting out into nature, going for walks, exploring puddles, you know, just different textures out in nature. That's going to be a really great way to bring in developmental play for that age, and to recommend to families, if you're working with families and they want to, you know, what can we do for our little ones? That's going to be a really easy, cheap way to get out and provide play. There's ample ways that we can get out and really explore. Whether if you haven't got a garden, you know, finding a nature space or the beach or anything like that can be really beneficial for little ones. And not overwhelming our little ones with all of the toys. It's not to say that they can't have toys, but look at toys and their repertoire of what the skills are going to be for a child. So have you got things that they can build with? Have you got things that they can bang together? Have you got things that they can pull apart? Have you got things that they can perhaps feel different textures? It's about providing a sensory rich environment, but a lot of that you do get in nature naturally. You know, there's bark, there's grass, all of these things. So that is developmental play for that age as well. And again, this is going to keep changing. You know, as a child's abilities change, we have to adapt and grow with them, and their interests are going to change, and the way they play will change. And I discuss a lot of this in my developmental play practitioner training, about all the different stages of play, the different schemas. So you'll find that, you know, particularly from the ages of 1 to 2, little ones will really be in the trajectory schema, which is throwing. They will throw anything they get, and it can kind of appear naughty. You know, some parents will be like, they're so naughty. You know, I give them their dinner and they throw it, and I give them this and they throw it. And actually, that's actually part of their learning, and about how they're exploring their environment, exploring how they interact with their environment. They're mapping out how things work. Everything to a child is new. So when they enter this stage, this schema, that's what we see. And there's lots of other schemas as well, where you see young children sort of following these processes of how they explore their environments. So when you're working with families, you can you know, encourage families to kind of look at what is their child doing, what seems to be their interest, what do they like doing? Is it that they like putting things into holes, or, you know, dropping things down or throwing things? Can you make that into a game? and really supporting families to make it more playful rather than it be like a behavioural problem, because it can get really, you know, parents can get really upset about these things when they think that their child's not behaving. And of course it is hard if you've got this toy and they throw it and it hits somebody. Absolutely. We do need to remind that child about being safe and making sure that we're playing with the toys that mummy, daddy, caregiver have given them. But that's really tricky with a young child. So I think when parents understand that more, they can become much more sort of understanding. The real importance of this age is given, as with babies actually, is that experience of movement. You can't learn to move your body if you're not able to move. So if you're not given the opportunities to move, if you spend a lot of time in front of the television or in front of iPads, which 100% have their place. I'm realistic. I'm a mum of 2, as Rosemary said, and my children watch the telly. They have their little tablets that they have their games and things on, but it's being mindful about that and ensuring that that doesn't become their main sort of way of playing, because it is not going to provide in any way the same experience as you would get in real life. It's great for just a quick 10 minutes here when you need to do something, or they're in the car and they need to be entertained. But as a full-time occupation, no. What we really want to be doing is giving these children an opportunity to move their bodies, to be able to coordinate their bodies. Because as I say, it's through movement and exploration of how our bodies interact with our environment that we're able to learn. And everything we learn supports this brain development, as I talked about in these first 1001 critical days. It's going to really support that. And it doesn't just stop. Brain growth doesn't just stop at those first 1001 days. We know that they are the critical days, that they are the most vital, but it does continue, growing all the way up and developing all the way up into our 20s actually, which is incredible. We've got this ability for our brains to just continue adapting and growing. But what we want to remember is that in those early stages, we want to be giving them the most amount of experiences as possible that are real life, and going to be giving them opportunities to not, as I say, just map out their bodies, because you actually learn about the fact you have a body by moving. It's something called proprioception, little receptors in your joints and your muscles that feed back to your brain about your body position, about your how you're grading your movement, how much pressure you're using, judging the force and things like that. And then you've got the vestibular side as well, which is in your inner ear, and that's helping you locate or orientate your head position. So it helps you to know about your whether you're upright, whether you're laying down. It helps to support your balance system. So those two work together really closely, as well as all the other senses. But those two in particular, when we're moving, that's going to be helping the brain to get this feedback about our bodies in space. And it's through movement, it's through exploring that we become skilled. And we're not expecting our little ones to be really skilled. This is a lifetime of learning and things like that we have ahead of us. But certainly in those early years, those preschool years, so going beyond that first 1001 days, going past 2, age 3, age 4, age 5, we've still got a really incredible opportunity to really be exposing our little people to all of these wonderful things that are available to them. And it doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be all singing, all dancing all the time. I often find the simple things are the best, and it's going to set them in such good stead for when they start school, and it really will support them lifelong. And the more we do this, the more that we give these little ones these opportunities, the more we are actually supporting the generations of the future, and we're actually supporting the society of the future. So you imagine these babies and these children who are now experiencing, as babies now, love, responsiveness, connection, play. You know, think how well nurtured their brains are going to be, the experiences they've had. They're going to grow up to be the adults who are going to be out there in society running the show, and they're going to be bringing up their own children in that way. So I get really passionate about how what an opportunity we have. And if we work with families, if we work with prenatally with families, if we work postnatally with families, we are in a prime position to be able to offer this information. It's not to say that we have to have all the answers, but just to point parents in the right direction, and to say this, you know, with love and kindness, and being realistic as well, that, you know, parents, we can't do it all. We are trying to spin a lot of plates, but I think when parents realise that it doesn't have to be structured, set out all the time, then I think they feel a lot less pressured and much more empowered. And then that way we can really bring in what I call the power of play the love way. So I don't know if anybody has got any questions or any comments they'd like to add. If you aren't watching this live, you can actually find me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm Carly Budd, Developmental Play Academy on Facebook, and I'm Carly Budd _OT on Instagram. So if you're not watching live but you'd like to ask any questions or see what I'm about, you can find me over there.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Carly.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you can just pop your contacts on the Facebook comment page. So again, if people are watching it down the line, then they can know when to find you. And it's so valuable what you're talking about, as you know, sort of been in this arena in the past. And I love when you said babies are learning how to be human. I love that. Yeah, and it's what kind of humans we're teaching them.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, the most important time in anybody's life is just that early time.
Absolutely. If people are interested in looking at that document, you can find it online. There's that first 1001 critical days that I was talking about, that's online, and that gives a lot of information there if people want to look into that further.
Wonderful. If you have got any questions, put them in the Facebook chat, and I'm sure Carly will find, or go and find Carly, because we need more people doing this work, is what I think.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, Carly. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming on.
Lovely. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Okay, so coming up at 2:15, we've got Lisa. So we've got a wonderful bit of meditation planned with Lisa. So look forward again to seeing you back at 2:15.